Good morning, Tuesday, June 9. Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington. I thought I'd take advantage of the sun break today, even though we've got cloudy and a chance of rain. I've got a weather app on my phone. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it says that we're going to have 10-mile-an-hour winds. Feels like 58 degrees, is 58 degrees. And, oh boy, 40% chance of rain at 1 p.m. on through the afternoon. So it looks like it's going to get a little bit cloudy and rainier. Right now it's only 5% taking advantage of that little sun break between the clouds and before the wind comes up. A little bit of noise outdoors, of course, so pardon me for that, but it's nice just to get a little bit of vitamin D. We need that. That comes from the sun reacting with our skin. It's something that our bodies have to have in order to be healthy. We put vitamin D in milk, and I suppose that's okay to supplement our foods with things we don't get naturally. But in times before the modern times, if we didn't get it naturally, we didn't get it at all. In order to be healthy, we had to get it. And our ancestors found ways to get it from the sun, the soil, the water, all the nutrients that they needed. Excuse me. Today, then, I'm continuing my look at weather. I'm out enjoying the weather. Think of the phrases we use. Enjoying the weather is what we do when we like the weather, when it's mild or sunny to our liking. Even if it's cold and snowy, we may be enjoying that snow if we're prepared for it. Sometimes we endure the weather, meaning we go out in it, but we'd rather not. Driving in a rainstorm on a busy road is not that fun for me or for most people. Sometimes we avoid the weather. Let's just stay inside, like that song. Oh, the weather outside is frightful. I know it's not that time of year. In fact, it's half a year away from that. We're in the summer. I imagine it felt like summer a lot in the Mediterranean area where Jesus lived. Today I want to go to the Sea of Galilee, chapter 4 of the Gospel of Mark. Again, Jesus began to teach by the sea. Such a very large crowd gathered around them that he got into a boat on the sea and sat there, while the whole crowd was beside the sea on the land. This is where I would love to ask Pastor John Guthridge, who went to Israel a year ago. What's it like there on that seashore? Is it kind of rocky? Is it sloped? Because it sounds like Jesus used a boat as a stage where he could then speak to the audience gathered around them, though, so that he could be heard by a larger crowd. Pretty arid and rocky, even though the sea, of course, had fresh water in it, and they would rely on that. Did they have a way to get that water, that fresh water, from the lake on up to some of the hills to water their crops? What did they grow? We grow over 200 crops in the Yakima Valley. I just felt a drop of rain. What did they grow there? I wonder. But the weather figures prominently in Jesus' teachings. Again, he's going to speak to them using things that they understand. The parables may have mysteries and deep truths, but for the parables to work, for them to be able to take those and really chew on them for a while, they had to have elements that the people could relate to. Verse 3, listen, a sower went out to sow. As he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it did not have much soil, and it sprang up quickly since it had no depth of soil. When the sun rose, it was scorched. Since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it and yielded no grain. Other seed fell into good soil and brought forth grain, growing up and increasing in yield, 30 and 60 and 100-fold. And he said, let anyone with ears to hear listen. Parables are these mysteries, these sort of riddles or puzzles that Jesus asks us to work out, that always teach us about one thing. Parables are about the kingdom of God coming into the world. Even some are called kingdom parables, but even the others teach us something about God's relationship with us. The parable of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the younger son who went away and came back. All of them have something to do with the kingdom of God, including this one. Well, the weather in this case is both friend and foe. It's the weather that produces good soil. Topsoil doesn't just grow. It takes centuries or millennia for topsoil. The freezing and the thawing breaks up rock, and small plants grow and break it up further. Erosion, it all causes these processes that deposit this rich, fertile soil in the valleys where we're able to grow crops. So some of these seed fell on good soil. Somehow they experienced good soil, the result of the processes of weather. Good and bad weather is necessary to produce topsoil. Some, though, rocky soil, Jesus says, will grow things, but they just don't last because they don't have roots. They wither when they're scorched. Well, why doesn't kochia weed seem to scorch? Why is it seems to grow anywhere? It seems to draw moisture out of the air. Here's an interesting tidbit someone told me, that naturally the Yakima Valley's relative humidity would be about 20 to 30%. Humans need about 50 to 60% for us to feel comfortable breathing. It's just too dry, and our nasal passages tend to dry and crack when it's around 20%. Where we lived in Southern California desert, it was sometimes below 10%. We had to add water at all times of the year just to be able to breathe in the house. And sometimes take wet cloth with us outside just to be able to wet our faces and breathe through it. The Yakima Valley is a steppe climate, which is just one above a desert, except for the fact that we have irrigated so much of that fertile land where we do have the topsoil. As a result, we have raised the relative humidity of that valley, and today it's about 60% with the irrigation going on, and of course there's some rain going on as well. But most of the time it's around 40 or 50%, which isn't bad for this time of year. In the winter, it will drop. When that cold, dry air comes in, outside relative humidity drops. But while we're irrigating, during this time of the year, we have water, and it's more comfortable for us, and it helps us to grow things. Of course, that water is there only because of weather. Weather is part of why we're able to live in so many different places of the world. But it is kind of amazing that something like 80% of the world's population lives within 100 miles of salt water, and the rest of them live within proximity of fresh water. We build our cities along seashores and oceans and bays and along rivers and on lakes because we can't live without water. And that water, the fresh water, all comes from what we would call bad weather, inclement weather, evaporation from the seas, bringing clouds, dropping rain. If it's just scorched land, then we would all be like the seed that fell on the rocky soil. Scorched, no root, none of those processes that help the soil to break down. Inclement weather is a gift to us. Rain and snow are the only reasons we have fresh water. And that rain and snow doesn't just give us fresh water in the reservoirs and the lakes and the rivers and the canals. It also then percolates down so that aquifer has fresh water for us to drink when we put down wells. What do we need to do to take care of the fertile soil that we have? What do we need to do to appreciate the weather that we have? Are we responsible for changes in the weather as humans? Well, certainly we seem to be changing the humidity level in the Yakima Valley. Globally, I don't know. Some said during the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been less driving, and as a result, there's less carbon dioxide, less sulfur dioxide, less carbon monoxide, less different things in the atmosphere over cities. And those cities are a little more breathable. Of course, that will change. That'll go back. Long term, I don't know. These storms that are coming in that are causing flooding from the Gulf Coast now all the way working its way up toward Wisconsin, is that partly our fault? And what do we need to do to take care that we don't change the climate? Because the climate is the long-term pattern that produces the local phenomenon that we call weather. Now, some will say, where's global warming because it's snowing? Well, that's weather, that's not climate. But weather and climate are related. What would God have us do to be stewards of soil? And one question, why does this sower throw seed everywhere? Why wouldn't we just plant seed where it's fertile soil, where it's adequately watered, where it gets good sun? Well, that's not the point of the parable, I guess. But what is the point of the parable? That's partly why Jesus gave us parables, for each of us to ponder what it means. In this case, what does it mean that the kingdom of God is the good seed that finds fertile soil where it will grow? Now, what's the challenge for our church? How do we then use the opportunities we have? How do we make hay while the sun shines to be a blessing to others with what God has given us as Immanuel Lutheran Church? Thanks. Tomorrow, 4 p.m., live Zoom Bible study.